coming today for this press conference. We have with us Reginald Boulding of the Arizona State Representatives. We were going to have Sandra Kennedy, Arizona Corporation Commission. However, she has some vehicle issues, but she's okay. We also have Ms. Irma Johnson. We have Destin Johnson, Dion's brother. Irma Johnson is Dion's mom. We have his niece, Soldier Johnson, and she's present. We also have members of the Phoenix Local Organizing Committee. Michael Lambert is here representing them. We have an individual from the group Renaissance. We also have an individual from Black Lives Matter Phoenix Metro chapter. The reason that we wanted to have another press conference is that we still don't have the answers about what actually happened to Dion Johnson. From the first press conference, we learned from the Phoenix Police Department that the officer is now saying that there was a confrontation between himself and Mr. Dion Johnson. As a matter of fact, he's saying there were two confrontations, one in which he reholstered his weapon, and then the second confrontation culminated based on the facts that were related to the Phoenix Police Department, that Mr. Johnson reached for his weapon. Another confrontation took place, and Mr. Johnson was shot and killed by this DPS officer. We're here because there is a lack of transparency and accountability as it takes to what actually happened. We're here because it doesn't make any sense that Dion Johnson was, based on the accounts, was passed out, he was drunk, he was sleeping. There was no weapon because the weapon was removed based on the DPS officer's statements. Prior to any official contact with Dion, the weapon was removed. And then the lack of prompt EMS services. As you watch the video that was released by Channel 3 and Channel 5, you see that the ambulance was there within 100 yards. And based on when we saw the video, based on the timestamp, the ambulance was there at least 6 minutes. And we still don't know exactly when Dion Johnson was shot. So we have a lot of unanswered questions. We want the Phoenix Police Department to either call the family, call myself, or reach out to me pertains to what information we have about this incident. There are witnesses out there that have not been spoken to by the police as far as we know. And so we don't believe the Phoenix Police Department has the entire story from non-interested parties. They have the story from a DPS officer, but we don't have the comments from the DPS officer that was working at ADOT, and so we don't have any body cam information. ADOT traffic cam, allegedly, ADOT doesn't record. However, we believe that any officer working at ADOT at the time of this incident could have pulled out their cell phone and recorded what they saw. And so without any further ado, I would ask that Brother Michael Lambert to step up. Have your name first, sir?
Michael Lambert, Lambert. I'm with the Phoenix Local Organizing Committee. I'm with the Ministry of Defense. I'm speaking today on behalf of our chair, Tremikas Mohammed. And I want to say that we're frustrated. We're frustrated as an organization, we're frustrated as a people, and we're frustrated for the family with no answers. And we did a lot of soul searching, and we were thinking, with the Phoenix Police Department, they're investigating a criminal complaint, which resulted in a murder, a killing, however you want to word it. But through their actions, we have to ask who they consider the criminal. Is it the deputy who shot Dion Johnson? Or are they trying to label Dion Johnson as the criminal? And the reason we're scratching our head with this is, if Dion Johnson is the victim, and Dion Johnson's family has information. The attorney has information. Why hasn't the police department reached out to them? If we have witnesses, why haven't they asked for them? They've been silent this whole time. And as soon as we do a press conference, they release a statement less than an hour later. And the statement they release is in defense of the officer. So with that being said, us as a people, us as an organization, the family has no trust in the Phoenix Police Department that they're going to build up a case to present to the prosecutor's office to possibly prosecute this officer. Because right now, it seems like all they're trying to do is slander Mr. Johnson. And he can't speak. So we're tired of this. We're tired of this. We want answers. We've demanded the release of the police report. We've asked to be able to speak to the ADOT worker that was working at the video station where he was able to see that there was some struggle. We want to see the car. We want to see Mr. Johnson's clothes. We want all this information, and if you think that the police department is working on behalf of the family, trying to build a case against this officer, then they will be contacting us. They interviewed Mr. Heston at Governor Ducey's press release yesterday, and they asked him, have you reached out to the family? He said no. Why not? Where's the compassion at? This makes it very difficult for us to say, you know what, they got our best interests. And the fact that they are in the top 5 for police-involved shootings against civilians, that doesn't sit easy with us. That has us concerned. So I said before that the clock is ticking. Well, time's almost up. Thank you.
For the record, State Representative Reginald Bolding, REGINALD-BOLDING. So, as a member of the Arizona House of Representatives, my job is to seek justice, accountability, and transparency for those Arizonans who live in this state. And watching the video, like many people did throughout this state and throughout this country, there are several questions that we have. And it really makes me think, how can we get to a place where there's going to be true transparency and accountability in officer-involved shootings? Appropriately, the Colonel Heston, he transferred this investigation to an outside agency. We truly believe that if there is an officer-involved shooting, the department that conducts the officer-involved shooting, they should not be running the investigation. So he appropriately transferred it to the Phoenix Police Department. But the question then becomes, is the Phoenix Police Department the appropriate agency to run any officer-involved shooting? What we know last year is that the Phoenix Police Department was ranked the deadliest police department in the country with 44 shootings, which makes myself which makes the family, which makes supporters, and which makes the public wonder, will we have an investigation that is truly unbiased and that is truly thorough? Because what we saw in those other investigations was not what community thought. So, myself, State Representative Gerald Peaton, and Arizona Commissioner Sandra Kennedy wrote a letter today addressed to the U.S. Attorney William Barr, the Assistant Attorney General Eric Danbert of the Civil Rights Division, and the United States Attorney for Arizona, Michael Bailey. And in this letter, we are asking that the Justice Department steps in, primarily because what we've seen on that video, which showed Mr. Johnson shot, laying on the ground, obviously in pain, handcuffed, and two troopers stood over him while the scene was secured. And in rock throwing distance, we saw an ambulance sit for over 6 minutes that could have potentially saved Mr. Johnson's life. So what is the policy? What is the policy when someone has been shot, they've been handcuffed, and the scene has been secured, and you have medical help in place? Is the policy that you wait, that you wait it out until that individual dies? Or is it that you provide immediate assistance? We believe the actions of these troopers must be looked into, and there must be a true external investigation, and we are calling in the Justice Department Civil Rights Division to do that. And it is our hope that through concurrent investigations, that all facts will come out, that justice can truly be served, because at this point, there's only one account of what happened on that Monday morning. And what we know is that there's additional information, and that has to come, and it is our hope in this letter that we can get additional information through a Justice Department investigation. Thank you.
My name is Dion Johnson. I'm here on behalf of my son, Dion Johnson. And like as the days go on, this hurts worse and worse. I can't sleep. I can barely eat. I have nightmares, and I'm afraid because I don't know what kind of world we're living in anymore. It just hurts me, it saddens me to have to be in front of you all with my son as a victim. That's something no mother wants to ever get, that knock, that call at the door stating something like this has happened. Police officers, Phoenix police officers are not willing to do anything on my behalf. They haven't contacted me. I haven't heard nothing since the day that it happened, that they came and told me that my child was dead. And they didn't even want to tell me. I had to keep asking them, where's he at? What's wrong? Is he okay? Is he okay? Finally, they said, officer involved shooting. He didn't make it. I was devastated. And what more can I do but to ask the people, my attorneys, everybody involved to get me justice for our family and for my son, because I know all these stories coming out, it's all misconstrued now. It's always that they're making my son look like the bad guy. And I know deep in my heart, like I said before, he's not a confrontational guy when it comes to the officers of the law. I just want answers. I want to know what happened we see partial of after the effect of the incident, but we didn't see the beginning of it. So where is that at? It's too many stories. It's too many things that's being covered up, and I want them to be brought up to the light so we can truly and honestly know the truth. Because I know my son didn't do the things this officer said he had did. I know that. I'm his mother. He's not gonna do that. So all I'm asking is everybody just take heed. Don't listen to what they're making my son out to be, because them stories aren't true. Thank you.
Dion's sister, through all this tragic, whatever you call it, just pretty much that shit happened. All I want is, I just want answers. Again, it's all I've been asking for. I just want answers. I want justice. I want the officer's name released. I want they release his name when they work quickly to release my brother's name. That's all. Like, if it was really they're trying to make it out to be, then we should be able to know that officer's name. But this whole story has been fabricated. It's not the truth. That is not my brother. I don't care what they're trying to say about his background. Period. When you know somebody, you know their background, you know them and their character, he is not going to assault or fight an officer. And everything they bring up about him in his past, there was never anything like that prior. You know, officer violent or assault or anything of that sort. So it's not true. And again, I just want answers. That's all we want. Just want answers.
I'm sorry, we didn't get your name.
Camille Landrum.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I want to say one thing, and I would like this case, my son's case, to be investigated by the FBI, because I'm not trusting everything's going on right now. Too much that's not being said. They're not coming out with everything, the truth. I would feel better if they come with the FBI investigations on this case. Truly, thank you.
It'll be there. We as a people will not experience justice, not true justice, until they stop killing us. With all that is going on now with the police killing and our people and the country in an uproar over the continued oppression of Black, Latinx, Indigenous, First Nations, and LGBTQIA+ peoples, it's finally time that we do something different. I am Renaissance, an organizer with Mass Liberation Arizona, a prison abolitionist organization dedicated to the liberation of our people, who believe that cages are never the answer, that it is all of us or none of us, and that the leadership of those who are directly impacted by these systems of injustice must be centered and followed. We have been working alongside several other organizations, many of whom are represented here today, to demand justice for Dion Johnson. The killing of George Floyd by police officers initially caught everyone's attention nationally, and then Dion Johnson here locally, which is what brings us before you today. As yet, those demands set forth by Dion Johnson's family have yet to be adequately addressed. What is the justice that can be truly felt by the family, friends, and loved ones of Dion Johnson? No matter what happens now or what steps the state takes to attempt to rectify the harms done will ever bring Dion Johnson back. Firing the officer and stripping that person of all privileges to ever serve in official or unofficial capacity to enforce the law are must. Furthermore, the family of Dion Johnson also wants this person prosecuted for the harms they have done. We do not believe that cops investigating cops will ever reveal the truth about the harms that the police are wreaking onto our communities or what they did to Dion Johnson. So now, there was a call to bring the Department of Justice in to conduct the investigation. While this is still a state apparatus of law enforcement investigating law enforcement, we have limited options given the current structure of the government and its agencies to adequately seek and achieve accountability for harms done. We must have systemic change. We have to get rid of this federal qualified immunity legal doctrine that protects officers from being held accountable. We also must get rid of the police officers' Bill of Rights from the Arizona law and Constitution. We must expand and publicize the Brady List, which tracks all the cops who have behaved unjustly towards members of the community. It needs to be up to date and accurate and accessible by everyone. We would have more options if the city of Phoenix was not attempting to increase the budget of the police department instead of funding the Civilian Review Board. The city of Phoenix needs to defund the police department and reinvest that money into the Civilian Review Board and other social safety net programs for Black, Brown, Indigenous, First Nations, and LGBTQIA communities. This is but a minor steps to address some of the harms that are being wrought upon our communities, which Dion Johnson is a victim of. However, we as a people will not experience justice, not true justice, until they stop killing us.
We don't have your name, sir.
My name is Renaissance, aka Michael Moynihan, and I'm an organizer with Mass Liberation.
Thank you.
My name is Zara. I'm with Black Lives Matter Phoenix Metro. We're here today to support the family because justice still hasn't been done. We still don't have the police report. We still don't have the officer's name. The media and the police department have the audacity to share all of Dion's history, but we can't even get the police officer's name. Dion wasn't a murderer. It's a police officer who is, and we don't even know what his name is. So we've been putting pressure. We've been out in the streets, and we're going to continue to be out in the streets until we have justice. And DPS, and now the Phoenix Department, which we know we can't trust to investigate itself, needs to give us the officer's name and fire him immediately. You wonder why there's an uproar in this country. This is how you treat us. You see in the video, not only did they shoot him, handcuff him, leave him on the ground to bleed out, the officer kicked him while on the ground. The paramedics stood waiting for him to die. You treat us like animals. That's why we're out here in the streets. That's why there is an uprising across the country, because we're not going to take this anymore. We demand justice, and we demand you to treat us like humans. That's why we say Black Lives Matter, because it's clear this country does not believe our lives matter. You would not let Dion bleed out when there was a paramedic. For 6 minutes, they let him bleed out while the paramedic stood by. That is against the oath that those EMTs took. How dare they let him die? That is exactly what happened. We know that they stood on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, and the paramedics waited for Dion Johnson to die for 6 minutes. You see, this is why we have to remind you that our lives matter, because it's clear this society does not believe that. So that's why we're going to continue to demand for justice. We're going to be protesting this Sunday, putting pressure again, because we do not have the officer's name, we do not have a police report, and the officer is still on the force. That is a shame, and we will continue to fight until justice is served.
Are there any questions?
Mr. Blackwell, I'll ask you this. After your last press conference, Phoenix police were quick to kind of counter with a lengthy statement with some new information. You know, they're alleging that there were multiple kind of confrontations, almost struggles, without any body or dash camera. How hard is it going to be for you to prove what happened, and what do you make of them, you know, releasing this after your news conference?
I think it's kind of perplexing for them to release this information directly after the news conference. They had this information when they released the first information to the news media when Dion was killed. And where was that statement from the officer? It's been over a week since Dion was killed. We still don't have a police report. And coupled with the fact that a number of officers in the state have body-worn cameras, and the fact that we're in the year of 2020, when a group of individuals do not have body-worn cameras, and they come into contact with citizens of the state or any state, how can they prove that what they said actually happened? And so we have the facts from the DPS officer. It's limited facts. And that's all we actually have. We'll never be able to say what Dion experienced when he was shot and why was he shot. We'll never be able to say what Dion actually experienced when the officer came to the car, because Dion's dead. And it's not fair that the police department gets to say, well, this is what actually happened, when there will never be an objective way of determining what the true facts are. Now, we have what they said, but we all know if they had a body-worn camera, there would be a more objective way of determining what actually happened on that day. And the fact that the DPS officers who ride in patrol vehicles have the body-worn cameras, why don't the motor patrol officers have those body-worn cameras? Why don't they have dash cams either on their motorcycles, or why don't they have body cameras on their persons? It just doesn't make any sense. And I think the law should be changed in the state that makes sure that any officer who volunteers to protect and serve citizens in this state or any other state, whether they look like us or they look like anyone else, those officers should have an objective way of determining what actually happened, particularly when somebody is killed. It just doesn't make any sense. And we hope that the independent investigation from the Phoenix Police Department actually reveals what happens. We hope the DPS investigation reveals what happens. We hope that the DPS officer that was working at ADOT at the time, when they were controlling the camera, zooming in and zooming out, peering over to the EMS vehicle, we hope that individual tells us what happens. And that's what we have to wait for. That's what we have to wait for. But like I said the other day, in our country, we have a group of individuals who have volunteered to protect and serve, but they're not serving and protecting all of us. Because time and time again, we have situations where mothers like Irma Johnson wake up to a phone call or wake up to a knock on the door, and they're being told that an individual officer who swore an oath to protect and serve has just shot their son, just shot their daughter, just shot their niece, their nephew. It just doesn't make any sense.
Do you have any update on when Mr. Johnson was taken to the hospital and when he was admitted there?
We have no update. As a matter of fact, at 101 in Tatum, there's a hospital right down the street. I think the Mayo Clinic is right there. Mayo Clinic has an emergency room. I don't know why Dion wasn't taken there. Maybe they don't have a trauma center. But we don't know, and hopefully we'll find out. We know Dion was shot at least once, but how many times did the officer shoot? We don't know that. There are a ton of unanswered questions, and that's why we have asked Reginald Bolden to submit that letter to the Department of Justice. So we do need a true independent investigation into what actually happened.
You know, police always say that they want to wait till they gather all the facts and do a full, thorough investigation before they put stuff out to the public. And they also are incredibly wary of releasing a trooper's name who's involved in a high-profile incident like that, because there's, I guess, the fear that he could be doxxed or that, you know, people could make threats against his life. What would you say to those arguments from law enforcement as to why they're withholding this information?
Well, law enforcement has their own reasons to withhold an officer's name. But in a case like George Floyd, we know who those officers were within a week of the incident, within a day of the incident. In this particular case here in Arizona, for some reason, they don't want to release the name of the officer that was involved. I understand the officer may have his own family, but Mr. Dion Johnson's family deserves answers. Dion Johnson is dead. His mother lost her son, and she deserves to know who killed her son and what type of background that this officer had. prior to coming in contact with Dion Johnson? Was the officer ridiculed and or punished for something he's done in the past? We don't know now, and hopefully we'll find out soon. But it's just not right that they can go in and ridicule Dion Johnson's name, but we don't know anything about the officer. And as a matter of fact, one thing we should say is that this officer didn't know who Dion Johnson was. And so when they want to talk about Dion Johnson's past, when this officer walked up to that car, the car was registered to a corporation. Dion Johnson's not a corporation, he's a person. And so this officer didn't know who Dion Johnson was. And this officer removed the weapon out of the car. And this officer said that Dion Johnson was passed out at sleep. Any individual, particularly here in the Phoenix Valley, Phoenix area, if you go into South, Scottsdale, Old Town, there are a number of people who are drunk, passed out drunk. Those individuals either make it home after they get arrested for whatever they did, or they just make it home on their own. But they don't get shot and killed. So why did Dion get shot and killed when he was passed out drunk? That's a question that needs to be answered. And that's all we want. We want answers. We want justice for Dion.
I want to ask you one more question about witnesses. You mentioned there are witnesses that you have that Phoenix police have not interviewed. Number one, what do those witnesses say? Number two, any rationale as to why Phoenix police have not talked to these individuals within a week when their memory is freshest?
Well, first and foremost, I don't know why the Phoenix Police Department hasn't found any witnesses. It's possible that Phoenix Police put out a communication asking for witnesses. But Phoenix Police Department, nor DPS, nor any other agency that's involved in this investigation of Dion Johnson's death has reached out to me or the Johnson family as pertains to if we have any additional information about what may have happened on the street. Now, I've said it before. One of the witnesses stated that when she was driving down the road on her way to work, she looked to the right and she saw a vehicle. There was one vehicle that had its flashes on. She didn't remember, or she doesn't remember seeing anybody in that vehicle. It was a gold-colored vehicle. Past that vehicle was a motor officer and Dion Johnson's vehicle. She didn't know Dion Johnson at the time was in the vehicle or not. Now, when she passes this vehicle, she slows down. She moves over because she saw the officer there following the move over law. And she sees that Mr. Johnson's door, his driver's side door, is open, fully ajar. And after that, she says she saw an officer crouched down in a shooting position with the weapon in his hands, pointing directly in the driver's side area. And that's all she can say she saw. She didn't see Dion Johnson. She didn't see a person in the driver's seat. She can't say she saw the weapon fired. She just saw the officer in the ready position, and she saw the officer crouched down, pointing the weapon directly into the driver's side of the vehicle.
Do you know if this witness brought that information to police, or did she just reach out to you?
She reached out to the family, and then she reached out to my investigator.
And but you don't know if she reported what she saw?
I have no idea if she reported it to the police, but I'm saying it now, right? So there's a witness out there who saw an officer in this particular case on the road with Dion Johnson's door wide open, and he was pointing his weapon directly into his vehicle at 5:35 or so in the morning. Any additional questions?
Yesterday, Colonel Silbert said that he had communicated with a representative of the family. Is that true? And if so, even at this point, would you want to hear from him? Yeah,
we would love the family. We would love to hear from the Colonel of DPS. We would love to hear from the investigators at either at DPS or the Phoenix Police Department. But we have not heard from them at all.
You know, if you take this before a jury and there is no body camera, should the trooper get the benefit of the doubt on his side of the story? I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we have to go with. How should people be viewing him saying that there were two struggles?
Well, I'm not allowed to comment on the facts that may potentially be a fact. I think the jury is going to be, if this does go to court and there is a jury of his peers, then this jury has to follow the court's rules and the court's instruction as pertains to how to weigh the evidence against them. Any further questions?
Sheriff Dion, actually, that we would be able to